So it's definitely gotten easier, especially as that's, it's still front and center now. It feels like you need to be in on that. You need to be like either ahead of the curve or with the curve, to make sure you're maximizing your output.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Paid Search NYC podcast. Today, chatting to Ryan Nowlan, who's a director of Paid Search at iProspect, part of Dentsu, one of the largest agencies in the world. Ryan's been in paid search for over 10 years. He's managed a huge number of clients during that time, all the household names. So he's very well placed to chat about today's topic, which is how do you gain a competitive advantage with early product adoption, specifically things like early adoption of tools and features in the platforms. So we're talking early adoption of PMax, Demand Gen, Advantage Plus, AR Max, etc. I feel like this is something that people generally have quite a strong view on. So very excited to get into that. But before we do, Ryan, welcome and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to talk shop.
100%. I hope you're staying cool where you are, because I know it's pretty hot today, 100 degrees in Manhattan, and I know you're not too far away. So yeah, I hope the AC is working overtime.
Yeah, it's working overtime. It's not keeping me cool though. It's hot. This window here is we're battling. Yeah. But
yeah, nice. Cool. So I give like a bit of a top level overview of your sort of career history there, but maybe give us a bit more and tell us a bit more about the sort of 10 years you spent in the industry, what that's looked like, the companies you've worked at, and then take us up to the role you do today.
Yeah. I had like a bit of a career change when I was around 30. I got my career started, the post-college career started. I worked at Enterprise Rent-A-Car for 5 years. It's actually a decently difficult job. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of stress involved in it. So be nice to your rental car reps wherever you choose to rent from. But my wife got an opportunity in Charlottesville, so we moved to Charlottesville. And at that point, I was able to do a bit of a career change, jump in with an agency called RKG, the Rim Kaufman Group, and then that was bought soon after by Merkle, which was soon after bought by Dentsu. And then we, our Merkle kind of brand was switched to iProspect. A lot of the paid search went under iProspect, a lot of media to Merkle. So there's a bit of a reshuffling there. So yeah, RKG to Merkle Dentsu to iPro Dentsu. So a lot of moving parts, but been under that kind of the same company for the full extent of my career.
And the role you're in today, as director of paid search. So you're overseeing, I guess, the strategy and a team that manage paid search across clients across a number of verticals, or are you specialized right now?
So across my tenure, a lot of different verticals. Right now, two different retail clients. So very similar products, and I could take learnings from one client and apply it to others. Wherever we're at within that testing roadmap. But yeah, it's definitely helpful. Having multiple clients, and then also having just like massive resources at the agency. A lot of smart people to bounce ideas at, and a lot of people are testing different things and have their input. So it's really great to just get all of that information, all those case studies, all that testing, and and help build strategy that works for your client.
Yeah, I had a number of conversations with people at both small and large agencies, and then people who've kind of transitioned from one to the other. And one of the advantages that always comes up with a large agency is like you said there, having those resources and just a number of people within a specialism to be able to tap into is really, really useful. So yeah, I've definitely heard that before. I guess that acts as a fairly good segue then into the subject around like early adoption of tools. And kind of how you approach that as a large agency. Maybe let's start off with what are some of the current tools and features that you're talking to clients about?
So there's a lot going on currently, and it's not just even like the new tools. It's the updates to existing tools and how we can kind of pivot and then change our campaign configuration around that. As things change, you just have to be like really nimble in recognizing like, hey, what worked for us yesterday doesn't work for us today. What's up? And how do we adjust to get back to where we were? And then, in terms of new tools, it's you kind of have to get it right. So generally you kind of try to start small in a test. If it's like, brand newer tools. So right now, like Search AI Max, they've renamed it a couple of times over the past couple of months. That's the new big kind of bogey on the radar. So starting to really collect content, different assets to really know, like, to figure out how we best approach testing into that. I think some of the newer AI stuff, it's not always fully baked. But like I found success, especially in that early adoption where people might shy away from it. It's hey, let's start testing into it, whether it be to a small degree or full jump in. But we had like broad batch, we did a full jump in, and it worked out really well for us. When for my one client, and then another client, wanted to take it a bit slower and have us prove out that it'll work for them. So really, like, every client's a bit different, and it's not just like, hey, we need to be doing this tool. It's does this tool make sense for what we're trying to do?
Yeah. And likewise, definitely saw advantage with broad match early on. I think maybe I got lucky with the client we tried it on, because after that, the same as you, like, we did find things where it didn't work as well. I guess taking a step back on the broad match piece, you could argue that anything that has larger budgets and covers most of a category, in terms of like a broad offering, is probably going to do better from a broader expansion of targeting point of view. So I wonder if that's actually one of the learnings here, given that a lot of the tools and changes we're seeing are an expansion of targeting. Maybe that's the way to think about if this is good for the client. If you're working with someone who's, very broad category appeal versus niche, maybe that's would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, bigger budgets definitely help. When you have smaller budgets and more specific targeting, it's, I think you're managing more. The more that you're taking your hands off the wheel, for bigger budgets, across larger categories, you can't manage it all, right? Like, so then you're starting to hand that back to Google. And broad match has been really successful there when it's okay. Like, we want to capture, it's not the old way of 90% of our revenue comes through 6 keywords, right? Like, it's really the way that the user behavior and the searches are changing. They're becoming, longer tail and more conversational. So broad match has really helped out there, where it's really leaning into those audience signals a bit more than necessarily query intent, but more niche. You might still be in that, most of your revenues coming through specific search queries or orders or whatever you're optimizing to, comes through like those, like 6 to 10 terms is going to make up the bulk of what you're driving. So yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd still probably be running broad match either way. But maybe I don't know. It's been a while since I had the smaller budgets. So
how would you think about other advantages and disadvantages when it comes to either adoption of broad match? Let's say it was day one of broad match, or something newer like Search Max, AI Max.
Well, I mean, the advantages are pretty clear, right? It's if you're able to do something that other people aren't able to do, because you have the new tool and they're not using it, that's going to give you a leg up into all that that new inventory. So it starts out, a lot of it's low hanging fruit because you're in there first, right? So you have that competitive advantage. The counterpart of that is, things can go wrong quickly on Google, and all of a sudden, like, I've seen instances where my full budget, twice my budget, is spent within an hour, right, of launching something. So, and that puts you in a hole, right? Because now, like, if that spend wasn't good, then you have an efficiency target, then you have to be over efficient here on out. So, yeah, newer tools, you definitely want to step in a bit more, to tighten up budgets. Maybe like if you're going to test on one campaign, pull that off of a shared budget, or, isolate that campaign. So you isolate the impact if something goes wrong. So you're not sucking all of everything's budget out to, and it could just be like one setting mistake, or you did some level of optimized targeting, or audience expansion, or if we're talking demand gen, that wasn't, like, didn't really fit well with like maybe the bid strategy you're using. So there's been things like that. So you have to really be intentful with every setting you're selecting. When you're testing these new things, you have to have those best practice that content from Google, to really, like, make sure you're checking every box. Like, you're not leaving out some sort of location targeting or audience targeting setting or anything like that. So you have to be slow. You can't just, slap it together and launch. You have to really make sure that you're doing your due diligence there.
Yeah. So it's like making sure you understand to a very granular degree, what are the levers, options, settings for this new thing. And then when I've got a full view of all that, which ones are the safeguards I need, and which ones am I less okay with at the start. And some of those might be like actually best practice, or they said there's best practice, but maybe, you want to move away from that in that sense to create that guardrail. That makes a lot of sense. And I guess my next question was, how do you limit that risk? But it sounds like do that, but also isolation. So making sure that whether it's like budget or a campaign, isolate that from sort of everything else. I guess the next question there is, well, how do you make sure you do that, but also run it on something that's meaningful enough to be able to accurately judge success?
Yeah, right. Because you want to test somewhere small, but you also want to see that significance, right? Like, is there enough data there that says, is that an anomaly? Is it the day of week, or So I think, for the most part, you do try to control out best you can all other external factors, or Google has great tools for drafts and experiments and stuff like that. So yeah, I think you start small and you just start expanding. And I think another major component is you have to have eyes on it. You have to check in a couple times a day, and if you do, you catch things sooner. If things start going off the rails, you can be like, oh, all right, let's pull back the efficiency target, or tighten up the budget until we figure out what is driving this, or until you wait to see if the corresponding return is coming, which is not always on the day of the click too. So I think it's a lot of it is having that patience too, and just that full understanding of click date versus purchase date, and it's hard to you have to give everything time. It's with any test, there's learning, there's the value may be coming. It's just in the conversion delay might be a little longer because it's in some newer place, or hitting people higher in the funnel, or whatever it might be. So I think patience, but also like keeping an eye on making sure nothing looks crazy or feels out of control. But whenever I'm running a test, I'm every other hour I'm checking in. Okay, like, we good? We good? Nothing, and you look at that campaign and look at everything holistically, because who knows, everything's kind of impacting everything nowadays. If you're running the full stack, if you're running broad match with PMax, with demand gen, it's like PMax in the middle of just being able to do anything is really kind of, you have to really be considering that larger impact, that ripple effect from any of these tools.
Yeah. I totally agree on the hourly piece. I think most people who take that approach of looking at the hourly probably do so, I feel, because they got burned at one point, and they realize the importance of looking at reporting on a very, very frequent cadence. So yeah, I totally agree with that. And the time piece is also very interesting, because that's often a big component, judging things too early, not giving things a time. and it's not really something you can necessarily. I mean, I guess you can, like, you get learning periods. You can kind of see what the time period is in some cases, but often I feel like that starts with a conversation and a setup at the start before the test. And one of the things we chat about is like client buy-in. Is that a big part of the client buy-in in terms of what you have to communicate to them, like that kind of, okay, this is going to take a certain amount of time. We can't judge before then. Is that a big part of that client buy-in process?
Yeah, I think just at this point, whenever you have a client, there is, they're training you up on their brand or their business and their needs and their KPIs, and you're kind of training them on as you go. Like when they're asking, hey, can we do this? It's, you have to kind of train them. So it's a give and take. And I think, a good client agency partnership, that client is learning a lot as they go too, which makes them more effective in building that strategy and advocating for, what search is saying internally, right? So there's definitely a give and take. At this point, it's, if you're on smart bidding, you kind of, that's like really baked into everything. It's, here's the timeline of the flight. First 2 weeks is going to be that learning period. We're not really going to judge that too much. We're going to make sure nothing goes crazy, so we're not put in a bad place. But we're not going to judge it off of that. And then after like 2 weeks to a month, depending on your conversion delay, and then you start, can really start taking those results and feeling good about, the data significance. Sometimes it takes that long just to get the significance anyway. So, I think everybody in the industry is starting to know, okay, like learning period is definitely, or sometimes the fear of putting things into learning. I mean, we talked about that, the learning period a lot. So, I feel like, clients want to see immediate results. They're like, how's it going? After 2 or 3 days. And I'm always excited to share because I know how it's going because I've been looking at it every hour. Right. But a lot of times it's like, like pump the brakes. Sometimes, and we've seen it right in the data where, that second month in, you're like, wow, like look at it go, it really starts to cook. And, so I think it's all just baked into the brief or the, however you're communicating what the test looks like. And a lot of it is just, training up the client to understand that as well.
And do you think that's getting easier? Like there's just more and more acceptance and buy-in of that there is a learning period?
Yeah. So there's the buy-in and acceptance, and then it's just easier to run these tests because everything's changing so quickly that it like feels like you're always warranted to be testing, right? Like there's always something to test, and if you're not testing, you could be missing out. Especially if things aren't continually improving like you want it to be, then test a way to, continue to test it, how to get there. Make sure that, you're really checking every box there. And clients get that now with the evolution of the industry and of the SERP landscape and just of the evolution of the SERP itself. Like everybody's kind of feeling, okay, like something's, changing underneath our feet here. Like we need to be on top of it, reviewing, analyzing the data, and then testing new ways, new approaches, and just making sure that we're, moving with the industry, and not getting left behind. So,
yeah. Do you feel like search? I keep calling it Search Max, AI Max. Do you think there's a broader acceptance of AI Max as a tool more so than there was for, say, Performance Max?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, like Performance Max was coming out right. I think like Performance Max. I'm trying to remember the timeline, but I was speaking to a Google rep and when the Chat GTPs came out and they were like AI, and I remember like an AI became like a booming thing. I remember talking to a Google rep and they're like, what's your thought on the Chat GTP AI and stuff? And I was like, well, you guys are like using AI for bidding already, right? And they're like, yes, like we just didn't call it that, because we thought people would be afraid of it. We called it machine learning, but yeah, it's the same stuff we're using. And I was like, yeah, it's like, but yeah, so I think performance specs came out before that real AI got real popular and cool. So now everybody's like, I feel like we're really just starting to tilt into how can we use AI? How can we like where's the next big AI thing? And making sure that we're starting to really incorporate all this technological growth into our own programs. So it's definitely gotten easier, especially as that's it's so front and center now. It feels like you need to be in on that. You need to be like either ahead of the curve or with the curve. To make sure you're maximizing your output.
It's so interesting. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I mean, when it first comes out, it's so disruptive. There's going to be a lot of hesitancy around using it, a lack of understanding maybe. But then as people get more comfortable with it, it becomes more accepted, and new tools that come out that use that, higher level of adoption. I'm trying to think about what that thing is today. Like, what's the PMax or the broad match thing of today? I wonder if it's like AI creative. I wonder if that's the thing that's currently like, and even that's changing from like 6 months ago, but maybe 6 months ago, that was kind of what PMax was when it first came out in terms of, this doesn't look like something I want to get involved in. But, even that really has moved a long way in 6 months. Just find it quite interesting to think about, like, what's the equivalent today that we know is going to be widely accepted in, a couple of years' time. That feels like one thing.
Yeah, it really feels like the search max. Like from everything Google's indicating, it's like performance max and the search max are really going to be what pushes you up into those like generative AI types of placements. So you kind of need to be adopting these tools so you're well positioned as they begin to roll out. Like as they begin to monetize the AIs or the AI outputs within Google search or chat GTBs and your Geminis and all that.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked about the kind of advantages and disadvantages of adoption. The disadvantages being that you're essentially going to get left behind. And there's kind of the advantages being access to that inventory that nobody else is using. So, sometimes that's cheaper, etc. You limit the risk by making sure you fully understand the product as much as possible. Settings, setup, using the guardrails you have access to, and then segmenting from the rest of your activity without a separate campaign, separate budget, maybe separate bid strategy, draft some experiments.
Isolate the impact,
Isolate the impact, and then just making sure that you give it the time, I guess, to start small, but give it the time to properly work or not work and be able to judge success.
Yeah, and giving it time, that doesn't mean like total hands off, right? Like look at what you can look at, right? Like look at your traffic, look at your CPCs. Do they seem reasonable? Is there, I think it's always healthy to say, hey, is this working how I expected it to, even now? Like in terms of ad serving. And you can kind of wait for the return to come, because you really want to be looking at that click date performance. You want to let your attribution window close before you judge anything there. But that's not saying that you can't make tweaks and like make sure that it from a front end is performing how you expect it to.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Actually, you could even go as far as like modeling out what you'd expect. If you work with, say, Google or even just in platform, to be like, we're going to put X amount of budget behind this new product or tool. We're going to set a daily spend on this. We already have our benchmark CPCs, CPAs, CTRs, and we're going to judge it against that. And then if there are deviations in, say, higher CPC, we're going to want to see that play out in higher CVRs or whatever. That feels like a good way to just make sure that everyone's happy as it goes on. Even though you sort of set the parameters and been like, we need to give this 2, 3, 4 weeks, at least that modeling and being aware of where you're deviating gives people a bit of comfort around, I guess a sense of control almost in like knowing how it's performing.
Yeah, and you're also hoping that it doesn't like tank too, right? Even during that learning period, right? Like you're hoping that it's like reasonable. You're going for that, 15-20% revenue growth or efficiency growth or whatever, but you're hoping it's not like a huge step back even during that learning. If it's something like Search Max, which is like a more of a button click on an existing campaign that has the data and everything. You're hoping it won't tank anything. PMAX is a little different. I think it's that takes a little bit more time, and there's even just hiccups. Even when it's working properly, there's just hiccups where it'll increase YouTube spend by 5,000%, in a single day. We're like, oh, we're just learning out, exploring the space, and sometimes that's the kind of stuff you have to live with, or really keep tighter budgets, and I don't know, the channel reporting, and I think it'll continue. The channel reporting stuff will help kind of everyone point to stuff, and and really put the pressure, I think, on Google to improve a little bit of that waste in some of those campaign formats.
It raises just an interesting thought there around if you're using a lot of these tools, which are like button clicks and just an expansion of an existing setup, like AI Max doesn't really feel like it's super. It's not a huge deviation from the current activity. We kind of understand what it's doing. And so we don't necessarily expect any kind of tanking. That's not a product that's going to tank. It's got all that data, works very similar to everything else. I wonder if there's something to be said for, well, if you're not doing tests where things are tanking, are you testing hard enough? Because if every test you run is does okay, there's no deviation, it's well, are you really then pushing the boundaries for testing different inventory, different types of creative, different formats? I wonder if there's something to be said there.
Yeah, I mean, I love that question. If you're not failing tests, are you really testing everything, right? Are you really even testing anything, or just slowly adopting something you're that's almost guaranteed to work because it's the new latest and greatest, and that's where the money, that's where the attention's going. So it's gonna eventually be better, or else they wouldn't be rolling it out, right? So yeah, I mean that makes a good point. I've had tests that have failed before, and it's definitely disappointing when they do, and something I've tried to think of a good example of something like that, and a lot of times it's not if the test fails, or it's just it wasn't controlled enough, or was inconclusive. That's even worse, right? Where it's just we weren't able to control it enough to really say anything, or it was exactly the same, and it's inconclusive.
Yeah.
That's the worst case, because well, which way you go with then? Do you go with the test setup, or do you go with the original if it made no difference? So yeah, I mean, I do like that. I think a lot of times when tests that tank, so that's really thinking outside the box when you kind of go with some of those. But yeah, I like that. I like that approach, but with the right small amount of budget behind it.
Yeah, it's a balance. You want that to be in the kind of minority of tests you're doing, I guess, or make sure you've got a balance between the high risk stuff.
But the ones that tank are the most interesting ones, right? They're the most creative. I mean, in my opinion, it's hey, we thought this was a neat idea, we wanted to try it, but client liked it, gave it a go, and then it's just something. Usually, if it's just something you didn't think of before the test, oh right, of course it would fail because of that, or whatever it might be. But yeah.
But I guess in that example, that leads you on to the next version of the test, which could do better, could unleash a more positive insight, result, performance, etc. So it's all part of the journey.
Yeah, really. And again, the only failed test is the inconclusive or failure to control, where you walk away not knowing any more than you did before. Yeah, that's right. If you're not failing them here or there, then you're not testing enough, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I guess last question for you: what are you testing right now? What are you most excited about right now?
So we have a couple different tests. It's really as we've kind of felt some change in PMAX underneath our feet. So we're kind of testing different variations of like different combinations of standard shopping with PMax. In some instances, I've been testing like one of my clients it has international coverage, and with that, it's a lot of different countries in Europe and across the world, and it's so we're testing a little bit of, hey, let's just run PMax in this smaller budget country, or just PMax and then like our brand term, so we can kind of control from maybe inflating CPCs there. So different combinations of performance max and standard shopping, and or or even text coverage. So pretty excited about some of those tests. Search Max is on the radar. Recently got whitelisted, so we're discussing exactly where and how we want to test that. So I am excited about that one. It's on an account that has really strong TSA coverage already. So excited to see like what kind of lift, like, and does our really strong structure, does that pair well with Search Max and like give us an even greater boost, or is it we don't see much of a boost because we're already doing so much of that already? So I'm really excited to see like how existing DSA plays with Search Max, and if like like is a really strong structure going to boost even further, or is it going to you're not going to get much. And then just different configurations of PLA and LAA. Do they perform better consolidated? What are the trade-offs on control? Are those even trade-offs? Is it part of, like part of the value of handing back control, right? Like, because Google can decide, PLA or LAA, both can enter the same auctions, right? Like, by combining them and giving that control to Google and removing our influence on what serves where, we're pretty confident in consolidating them and giving that control back to Google if we're okay with not being able to control what investment goes where. Are we going to see better efficiency there, and really just letting Google pick whatever SKU is right for that person, and just remove our influence from the equation there. So a couple of different tests there. Then some other things I'm like down the road I'm interested in is like PMax for store visits. Just start testing more of the attaching the product feed to that, and what does that look like, and what does that get you? But that's like lower priority. I haven't really seen many people do that yet, or heard of anybody really test that. And interesting, like it's a functionality that's there. But most people, like, again, it's like, do we want to merge everything together into one, or do we want to keep them separate? So it's a lot of different things we can test. It's just choosing what's most urgent, I guess.
Great point. Yeah, there's always so much to test. It's just prioritizing. And I really like the approach of we're gonna see what works here from a segmentation or even just a control versus handoff to Google. Like, what are the limitations there? Because I think we all know the trajectory of it's going to get better and better at just taking more stuff and finding the best combination. But there are usually limits to that. So like, where are those limits? You find those limits by testing and then, maybe pulling back slightly. So I really like that approach. I feel like it's like very pro AI, but also being aware of the potential limitations, which I think is, the perfect approach.
Well, you want to primarily be leveraging AI to do things that you can't do, right? Like the things that like auction time bidding, like, we can't do that as good as auction time bidding. There's no way. Just the volume and the speed that all that stuff happens. So it's just wherever you can empower the AI to do those things that you can't do, that's really where you want to start. In my opinion, in terms of AI, something's just like, like have AI write like the ad copy for you, or it's like, well, I could write ad copy, and it might not be as good as that, but it'll be close enough. And maybe even better because I can control more for, those other quality sort components of copy or whatever it might be. But so I don't know, like having the AI create an image when you have a creative department that can do it and do it the way you want. It's like, well, you can save time, but you can do it, right? But when it really comes down to things like bidding or choosing what the right ad to show or product to show to any given user, it's just stuff we can't do. It's impossible to do. So have AI do what's currently impossible for you to do, and then scale out from there, I guess.
Yep. Yeah. So we've got that kind of high levels of complexity, leaning into AI's advantages there. Great. Yeah, and that's a great line to end it on. This was really useful. Thanks, Ryan.